Good morning, good evening, good night. My name is Quiva, you're on my channel, and I'm going to talk about some books. But I'm not going to do a September wrap up. September is dead, like she's gone. There's no point talking about her anymore. She's old news. So not going to do that. Sorry to disappoint. But what I am going to do is talk about two books that I've read recently, one in September and one in October, both by the same author, and do a sort of author study, except it's not going to be a full author study because this author has written a lot more than just two books. But it's going to be a study of both of these books by the same author. Okay? Okay. The author that I'm talking about is Taylor Jenkins Reid, and the two books I'm talking about are The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo and Daisy Jones and the Six, both of which are very long book titles, may I just say. The first one I read was The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. So what's it about? The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo is about this fictional film star called Evelyn Hugo, who is now fairly elderly. I actually can't remember her age in this. I'm gonna say in her like late 70s, like 79, early 80s. I win a point if that's right. And basically Evelyn has had this like huge film career and has always been in the spotlight for basically being one of the most beautiful film stars to ever exist. But there's not much that's actually known about her as a person, and she is pretty loath to do any actual kind of meaty interviews. However, that all changes at the beginning of this book when our main protagonist, Monique, who works in like a magazine, as far as I'm aware, is told by her boss that Evelyn Hugo wants to give an interview to Monique's magazine, but only if Monique interviews her. And so the setup of this novel and the structure of this novel is basically Monique interviewing Evelyn throughout the whole book, but through that kind of interview technique, we're brought back through Evelyn's life from her perspective. So Taylor Jenkins Reid basically uses this kind of flashback technique where Evelyn is like telling Monique about her life, but by telling Monique, she's actually telling us as the reader about her life. So clever. Galaxy brain activated, honestly. And you basically learn about the 7 husbands that Evelyn had, hence the name, hence the title of the book, guys. Catch up. Yeah, you learn about these 7 husbands, why she had so many husbands, who was the real love of her life, the much more intimate, I suppose gory details of life in Hollywood and the sacrifices that one must make, or one had to make at that time in Hollywood as a woman who wanted to have a successful career. The second book that I read by the same author, Taylor Jenkins Reid, was Daisy Jones and the Six. And Daisy Jones focuses on a fictional rock band called The Six and a fictional singer called Daisy Jones and the Six. And the band and Daisy's relationship as musicians and artists, their rise to fame, how they kind of came together, and the kind of making of their big seminal album, and all of the personal relationships going on within all of that. And I'm not going to go too much more into what it's actually about, because what I'd like to do now is kind of focus on Taylor Jenkins Reid, right? And the obvious themes that she enjoys writing about and that she has included in both of these books, and just look at the parallels. I love drawing some good old parallels, so that's what we're going to do in the video. We're going to look at the parallels between these two books. So the first thing that jumped out at me was, I mean, the really obvious parallels, right? Like the obvious parallels of both of these books are about fame. Evelyn Hugo was this massive film star. The Six and Daisy Jones were these massive musicians and artists, and both of these like cohorts had all of the trappings of fame as well. They had like the wealth and the glitz and the glamour, but they also had the really horrible sides of fame. And that's the second parallel that is really obvious between these two books and these two works, is that Taylor Jenkins Reid, through her fascination with fame, tries to show this kind of evil and ugly underbelly to it. And that manifests in different ways in both books. Take, for example, Daisy Jones and the Six. Drug addiction is the massive fascination in this book. Both of the kind of main characters in this book, if we want to call them that, the lead singer of The Six and Daisy Jones, struggle massively with addiction throughout this book. And it is the thing that unites them, it's the thing that drives them apart, it's the thing that they cling on to, and it's the thing that they try to break away from. It is the massive central struggle throughout this entire novel, and I personally think it is done really, really well. Because you are left feeling incredibly frustrated at times with these characters and the decisions that they're making, and you just want to shake them and make them come to the epiphanies that they need to come to, right? That they need to get away from drugs, or they need to get away from the personalities around them that might lead them back to drugs. And so often they make the decisions that you really don't want them to make. And I think that that is like the kernel of addiction, right? That it's not something that you can just break away from super easily just because other people want you to. Then if we move over to The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, while it again appears that you know, fame is the big theme here, and it is, there is a much larger fascination going on, just as there is in Daisy Jones with addiction. And the larger fascination in The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo is about Evelyn Hugo's sense of self. And about how she has time and time again, continuously throughout her life, sacrificed her sense of self in order to attain the fame that she desired in her career, in order to have a successful career, in order to do what she wanted with her life. But really all you end up with in the aftermath of all that success is this feeling of, I can't believe she had to sacrifice so much about who she is in order to achieve that. And so again, it's that ugly side of fame. It's the, you know, what effect does fame actually have on a person? What does it actually force someone to do? Whether that's driving them to some sort of addiction or forcing them to hide something huge about themselves. And I think, you know, that ends up being the massive parallel between these two works, and is definitely something that Taylor Jenkins Reid is really good at doing. I suppose that's like the big point I wanted to get across in this video. But another parallel as well is that Taylor Jenkins Reid also uses a very similar narrative technique in both of these novels, literally just in how they're structured. So as I said, The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, the whole structure of that book is that we have Monique, our main character, interviewing Evelyn Hugo about her life, like retrospectively looking back at her own life and telling us all about it. But we have a very similar technique going on in Daisy Jones and the Six, where what we actually have, again, is an interview with all of the members of the Six and Daisy Jones about the time in their lives where they recorded this album together, they were touring together, and where they were at the height of their fame. And what was really quite good about it is that you don't feel like it's like an overplayed thing. At least I didn't feel like it was. I didn't go into reading Daisy Jones and the Six after having read Evelyn Hugo thinking, oh, here she goes again, just doing the exact same thing. I think because she made the characters in both books so strong and so individual, it didn't really feel like, oh, she's just like hashing out the exact same structure again. Okay, so I think I might be done now. I know I haven't given like book reviews for either of these books, and it's more just been a focus on like me drawing parallels between the two of them, but that was the aim of the video, so I don't even feel bad. But I will say, as like a general review of both of them, I really enjoyed both of them. I found them both to be incredibly readable. Like, I was really invested in both of the stories and really wanted to keep going back to it. So that should kind of tell you enough, to be honest. I think that's enough to go and pick these books up. But anyways, yes, I had a lot of fun doing this. I really enjoy kind of like picking out things and doing little comparisons. So thank you for watching. Do pick these books up, support Taylor Jenkins Reid, and see you next time. Bye.